Okay, we directly continue with the next talk. May I introduce Thorsten Strufe? He's a very good friend of mine from Germany. He's working at Darmstadt University, and he's basically a researcher there, and he researches in peer-to-peer systems, but he has also a very, very big background in privacy. He's actually one of the creators of Safebook, but I think he will tell you a little bit about it. Yeah, I leave the stage to Thorsten.
Great.
Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for the invitation anyway, and thanks a lot for announcing us the slow start of the week. So here we go, here's the slow start. I was just thinking, so I'm actually working together with a couple of other people at TU Darmstadt. I'm based in TU Darmstadt. I'm not quite sure how much you'll be able to see at the side. And one group with which I'm working is actually working on remote controls. Since Echa was showing the remote controls, there's actually quite interesting work on how you could remove the need for a remote control device at all, but you could just use your hand and have a couple of cameras finding out how you use your hand. You only need 4 spots, and then you can tilt or turn your hand, and depending on how you hold your hand, it has different effects. I'm going to try to make. Oh, let's see. Okay, but anyway, so yeah, my name is Thorsten Strufe. I work at TU Darmstadt, and as a matter of fact, I'm so officially I'm working for the chair of peer-to-peer systems, but as a matter of fact, most of the time we're working thinking about the impact that social networks have, online social networks such as Facebook, Instagram, and so on. And when Echa invited me, he asked me to give a talk about roughly how the internet changed our daily lives. I guess from the background of working on security and privacy of social networks, and maybe regarding our background in building privacy-preserving systems, trying to allow people to use such kind of systems without losing their privacy. I'm just going to give a rough overview. I have to admit I'm very much on the technological side. I'm not very much on the artist side, but I tried to take as many mathematical formulas, and well, there's no mathematical formula, and there's almost no hardcore technology in the talk. I tried to use lots of pictures. So Echa asked me to talk about how the internet moves us and how does it change our lives. So when he asked me, I thought, okay, so if I think about the everyday user, my parents, anybody, I don't know if you can see it, but many people consider the internet to be emails. And then maybe one thing that haunts them is viruses in emails. Talking or thinking about my girlfriend, I think the first thing that comes to her mind when she thinks about the internet, it might be something like Amazon.com or eBay, or maybe Last Minute, which is some kind of a cheap flight service on the internet, which is quite amazing. As a matter of fact, one thing here already, most of these services are international, whereas in the earlier years, if I have a sister living in Australia, my girlfriend is from Canada, so if we wanted to buy presents for our relatives, we were buying them in Germany and sending them for lots of money to the countries of our relatives. Right now you can buy stuff at Amazon.com in Canada and and get it delivered directly without paying lots of transportation fees, or the same for Australia. Actually, Amazon.com is not very good in Australia yet, but there are other services. And anyway, there are plenty of services that you can use. Okay, well, how is the internet moving us? Talking about the internet and what you do on the internet to my students, I guess most of the students would say, well, it's something like Gnutella, Napster, Pirate Bay, and so on, because I'm using the internet to get all the content that my friends have uploaded from their GarageBand. And And so I think many people between my students would say, okay, one of the big impacts the internet had on myself is probably file sharing, getting content easily. Or again, talking about families which are living quite far apart, Skype, voice over IP, you can talk for free now. I mean, I can call my sister in Australia, maybe I would say 8 or 9 years back, I would pay probably around about €2 per minute, and now it's free, and I can talk literally as long as I want. Sometimes I have to talk longer than I want. And but anyway, so it's a really great invention to make life easier on an international scale. Thinking about the impact maybe of the day-to-day life of many people, even though they might not always want to admit that, I guess that Facebook, Instagram, Google Plus, and so on is actually having the largest impact, or being the largest impact of the internet on our daily lives. But I'll get back to that a little bit later. And of course, today everybody thinks about gadgets, but these gadgets, Android phones, iPads, and so on, they're already out of fashion. I don't know if you heard about the Google glasses. I'm entirely sold to the Google glasses. It's going to be an augmented reality device that you can use just like a glass, just like glasses, and you'll have pretty much everything that usually you see on a screen directly projected in front of your eyes. That might sound scary to many of you. I love that. As soon as it's available, I want to have one. I think it's going to be great for many reasons. But anyway, taking one step back, let's probably have a look at a short history of network services. So we're here today, and we have all these services without really understanding, or maybe many of you don't really grasp the long way that it took us. So Escher, for example, might know one of these devices. It's a VT100. It's a dumb terminal that used to be one of the first network devices that people were actually using. It was connected to a mainframe. You were using it for work. It was just showing you text, actually, and it didn't do much other than giving you headaches. Maybe the first kinds of network services that Escher and I might have been using were BBS systems. So you were having your own computer at home. You plugged it to the telephone. Actually, I don't know. Some of you might know acoustic couplers. So you were really plugging the headphone or the handle of the telephone on rubber plugs. You were hearing some noises because the digital information was transcoded into audio, and then you could actually go on the net. Actually, back then when we were using those BBS, there was not much you can do. You could upload some data, you could download some data. Usually the BBS systems were just local. You couldn't exchange data between the BBS systems. In some cases, other people could log into the same BBS, so you could chat, which was a little bit tedious because you could type much faster than you saw the digits appearing on the screen. But for us, it was already quite amazing. Then a little bit later, around the 19th round, came the World Wide Web. You're quite lucky, probably, that you can't see. So there were a couple of pages that where I have screenshots. For example, the first official web page by IBM was pretty basic, let's say, and quite simple, straightforward. And but as a matter of fact, right from the beginning, there was much more info than we really wanted. So I don't know if people of you were, or some of you have seen GeoCities sites with lots of colors and offering you to buy advertisement space here. I think down here you can probably see the spaces for rent. If you want to put your ad on this little boy's webpage, then you can buy the space and so on. But nobody was actually accessing this information. Same for other kinds of design, since everybody back then, or nobody back then, was really able to grasp, and there was not much design actually in those pages. Yet back then there were quite high barriers, so it was quite costly, and as a matter of fact, it was quite difficult to set up and maintain a web page. You would have to run your own server, or you would have to buy web space for a lot of money. So initially it was just a few nerds like Escher and myself then maybe, of course, universities and research centers and large companies. If we think about the birth of the World Wide Web, the CERN, that was the first web page that was served whatsoever at the CERN in Switzerland. Then, of course, there were the universities and a couple of big companies. I very much like this website. This is the first website of Fiat. And you can see that already in the early days of the internet, they found the icon for under construction. So, so I don't know how long this has been up, but it was the first official website of Fiat. Let's have a look at the growth. So I was saying that back then there were not many people, and they were not really, maybe not really very much capable of doing many things. I don't know if you can see the plot here, but I've plotted the number of devices that were connected to the internet over the time, and it starts with 1970 back here. So here we are in the order of 20 devices, and then over the time we see a quite sharp increase. 1983, we already have something like 500 to 600 devices connected to the internet. So that was already within 10 years almost an exponential growth. Then again, of course, if we look a little bit later, here we start from 1971. Here we have 1983. That was the plot on the left-hand side. But then if we look at the time after the invention of the World Wide Web by Tim Berners-Lee, after 91, we really have an exponential growth with exploding numbers of devices. In 1992, we already had 2 million devices connected to the internet. And then drawing this plot a little bit further down to mid-2010, in mid-2010, there were literally over 800 million devices connected to the internet. And that means end hosts or end devices like PCs, laptops, mobile phones, and so on, not the devices which are in the backbone of the internet. Looking at the reach, how many people are actually able to use the internet? We see a similar growth, a similar exponential growth, starting with only a few people over here in the late 80s, early 90s. If we go to the year 2010, we already have 2 billion people who are regularly accessing the internet. 800 million devices and 2 billion people around the world regularly accessing the internet. Or if you look at the reach in percentage, already in 2010 we were at the rate of around about 30% of the people on Earth who were regularly accessing the internet. And I think that is pretty mind-boggling, because we don't usually we think that in Europe and in North America, okay, we have the internet, but many other people don't. But here you can see that, as a matter of fact, most of the others actually do have the internet as well, and they use it regularly. So what's the reason behind this? Of course, I think one reason is there's mass media. You have information at your fingertips. You can get any kind of information at any time. We were talking about that earlier. Why think yourself if there's Wikipedia and Google? So, you have information at your fingertips. One, maybe the main application of network devices, actually maybe the main application of human interaction, is communication, of course. So you have Skype, voice over IP. You can talk for free to people far away. But of course, additionally, you can chat, you can text, you can have discussions, you can mail, and so on. And I think this kind of communication is another main driving force for the increasing reach of the internet. Shopping, again, talking about some people's girlfriends, maybe, and maybe some people's boyfriends as well. Shopping, I think, is another driver. I'm just coming back from Asia, and Asia, as a matter of fact, online gaming is maybe the primary driving force of internet growth. And then, of course, there are the usual suspects. We have user-generated content, live and on-demand, multimedia streaming, and so on. And this is all. This is only giving a picture of end users. I mean, of the people using the internet as individuals. I'll omit all the consequences that the internet had on economy and businesses. I mean, we could talk 2 or 3 hours about that, and there's a lot to tell here. But let's omit that for this case, for this talk. But then again, what is it really that keeps people on the internet, that moves the people on the internet? I have a plot here, a table here from 2010. It's by the Nielsen company. Sorry, it gives the top 10 web brands that were used or that were visited in January 2010. if we see, I don't know if you can see it here, but we see the top graph is Google, of course, all the Google sites, and we have Yahoo, Facebook, and so on. We have Google 152 million unique audiences, page impressions. Yahoo 134 million, Facebook 116 million, and so on. But then, as a matter of fact, if we go to the third column, we see that people use Facebook. As a matter of fact, people on average in January 2001 were using Facebook for 7 hours. That's like 3 times as much, more than 3 times as much as any other site. And this is an average. I mean, when I go on Facebook, I use Facebook for 2 minutes. And I guess that many people don't use Facebook for a lot of time. But this is an average over all the users, and again, it's an average of 7 hours that people use Facebook. So this, of course, obviously is a strong driving force. Now, thinking about time, we saw... This is, as a matter of fact, this is 7 hours for the whole month of January. Yeah. Yeah. It's not per day, it's not per week. It's... No. It's not... So no, the way that these numbers are taken is that people log the network traffic. So only if people regularly send requests, then the time increases, or they're still logged as a single session. Anyway, this was in January 2001. I didn't have much, or I didn't find this kind of information for later times. But if we look at other kinds of plots, here's another plot to December 2010. It's the time, I don't know if you can see it, but it's the time that people spent on different sites. We have all the Google sites, we have all the Yahoo sites. All the Google sites are somewhere here. All the Yahoo sites are somewhere here, slowly going down. And then we have Facebook, and Facebook is really still increasing its fraction of time that people use it. Yeah?
You did mention not wanting to address all the economic factors, but
yeah.
Just as briefly acknowledge the volume of network activity of this kind of stuff on par with economical traffic and business, like the business-oriented traffic? Or is it intertwined that you don't really know what it is? Or you just, like,
I have to admit that I wouldn't know. So you mean the fraction between traffic that people use or that is used on Facebook as compared to business-to-business traffic and so on?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know the exact numbers there, no. But I assume that Facebook would actually be significantly more, because most of the business-to-business traffic is really not that large in volume. I mean, on Facebook you watch videos, you look at photos and so on, whereas business-to-business usually is to send emails. Maybe you attach a photo, but so I guess that I would assume, I don't have the numbers, but I would assume that this is actually making up a larger share than the business-to-business traffic. Yeah, again, thinking about the time that people spend on the internet. If we take March 2010, that was after the initial table, and take it as 100%, and go all the way to March 2011, then it turns out that the people have increased their time they spent on Facebook by 60%, whereas they spent actually only roughly 90%, a little bit less than 90% on all the other sites. So Facebook is really taking up a lot of the time that people use on the internet. Anyway, so all this to say, what keeps the people on the internet and what moves the people on the internet, I think it's the digital village. I mean, it's Facebook. If we look at Facebook, it's mainly a gossiping service, right? Or maybe a stalking service. You see some people, you see the profiles of some people. Some people actually here are from Ilmenau, so you might know Denise. And some of the people, so this is actually a coincidence. I only took this profile because I was always quite amazed about the number of, about the scope of information that people are sharing. So all their contact information, where they're from, and so on. I have a better example of a friend from France. They share what they like, who they like, which television series, which music, with whom they're in relationship, with whom they have been in relationship, and I think it's pretty mind-boggling. But of course it works, because somebody else might be interested in the person, and then it's nice to have a look. I mean, so anyway. Further services on the web, I mean, similar social networking services are quite nice. You can You can create an account in a service where you add your business contacts or your friends. You keep your travels, your business travels up to date, and then whenever you are at the same place with one of your friends, you're informed. Great for dating, anyway. But in this case, it was nice because I actually had an account there too. I think I still have it. I just forgot the password. But at least it's a different provider. So here we have data about a person, about their movement patterns and so on. But at least it's in a different database. Of course, it didn't take long, and then you have the main big social network providers integrate these services as well. And since it's much easier to only manage one profile instead of managing many different profiles, the people put all their data again into the same basket. So, so the big service providers get more information. And all this with a couple of calculated side effects. I'm a big fan of cartoons. And here's one cartoon. I don't know if you can read it. There are 3 people sitting on the street. They're dressed quite nicely in business attire. And the first is having a sign saying, "Unemployable due to stupid personal stuff I put on my Facebook page." The lady in the middle says, "Me too." And the third guy is saying, "For me, it was an embarrassing YouTube video." So people actually do lose their jobs. People actually have, there's actually an impact. People actually do not get jobs because of stuff that is found on Facebook. There are other impacts that we see on the real world. Some people somebody has been crawling a German social network and was arrested for that. I think that's ludicrous because I mean we're crawling all the big networks at TU Darmstadt. We're crawling all the big social networks on a daily basis because we just want to know what is changing, how the people are using them for analysis reasons. But in this case, people got arrested. Woman in Canada, it's all folklore. Woman in Canada lost her benefits because she was actually getting money from an insurance because apparently she was depressed. But then the insurance found pictures of her dancing in a strip club in Cuba on her Facebook page. And then they said, well, it doesn't seem to be too bad, so maybe you can go back to work too. Other cases where some accounts have been copied and cloned. We did that too at some stage. Or very nicely, there's now the first reported. Well, actually, in March 2010, there was the first reported case where people were posting on Facebook that they go for a hike, and in the meantime, they were robbed. So I was always wondering when it would happen. And in March 2010, it was the first case where it actually reportedly happened. Because it's nice. I mean, I can have a look. I can automatically scan the profiles of many people at the same time. I can set filters. I can see what's happening, and then, of course, since the people give me all the information, where they live, what they do, I can exploit that for my own good. Another quick cartoon, Joy of Tech. I'm a big fan. So there's a guy sitting. I guess you can't read it. So there's a guy sitting in front of his Facebook page, and he says, "Oh, cool! Someone poked me." Okay, so it's not a normal poke, but it's an Facebook application. It's a super poke. And then he says, "Oh, okay. To get my super poke, I have to install Super Poke Extreme." And then he reads the license agreements, and he says, "To install Super Poke Extreme, you must allow access to some of your info." And then it reads, "You have to allow access to display all the internet activity, publish all my passwords on public mini feed, show all internet banking, display show all internet banking, display all medical records, and list all my medications." And of course, this is a privacy outrage. But then again, down here it says, "Damn, I'd really like to see that poke." So in the end, he installs it anyway. I guess that's what's happening a lot. Anyways, to this extent, it was mainly stationary, so you were sitting in front of your computer. But what we see now is that it's getting increasingly immersive to daily life. You can use Google Latitude. I don't know if anybody has ever used Google Latitude. So it's a service that you can, well, actually with the Android phones, it's already pre-installed. It's not enabled automatically, but it's, if you do the mistake of pushing the wrong button, then it's enabled. And then your phone posts to Latitude all the time where you are. You have like a social, more or less social network account, and your phone tells all your friends, whoever they are, where you are at the moment. Some people use that because they like it. I'm always impressed. It gets even worse. There's Looped, which is a service. I don't know if it's still in business. I heard they had problems, but There was a very similar service where you could additionally chat with your friends, point them to certain places, and so on. And then finally, there's tweet spotting. That's a slightly different idea. In tweet spotting, it's a website. I think that's taken down by now, but where the providers were simply scanning all the tweets that were published publicly, visibly to everybody. They were looking for photos, and then in the photos they were looking in the meta information. And then of course many people like it that when they take photos with their mobile phones, they can put the GPS information where they took the photo directly as meta information into the photo, because it's easier to sort the photos afterwards. And then you share it on Twitter. And then obviously just from having a look at the public feeds of the people, you know where they are at this point in time. You can really track where they go and so on. This is apparently a more or less instant situation of tweets within the last, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes. So these people have been posting from there. This is a site that has no relationship with these people at all. There's no friendship relation, there's no authorization or anything, because people post it publicly. It's just there for you to take. But anyway, I mean, that sounds maybe pretty bad. Oh, wow, okay. Okay, that might sound pretty bad. That sounds pretty bad too. No, but this is okay anyway. Okay, then I'll only get to my initial part, but that's fine. So I'm not only pessimistic. I just have two little stories about traveling in the 21st century. The first one is going to be very quick. I've been traveling to India in 2002. So what do? You go to India. To find out what's happening there. Or where do you go? You buy a Lonely Planet, a travel guide. Then how do you get there and how do you get around? In order to get there, you go to the travel agency down the road and you buy a flight ticket for the price that they offer you. And once you're there, you buy a travel map, and then you try to find out when the buses go, where the trains go, and so on. What happens then? Where do you want to sleep? Of course, again, you take the book, you look into the book, you try to find out. I mean, the book is maybe 2 years old, and the prices are not right anyway, but you just spot one of the hotels, you go there, you realize, okay, it's already booked, or it's closed in the meantime, so you take you look for a different hotel, and so on. And now in this case, it was India, and India, luckily, everybody speaks English. And then another side effect of that, back then we took photos on slides, around about 120. I think I watched them once, and ever since they've been in my basement, and I never watched them again. Now here I'm in the wrong audience today to say that nobody ever watches slides, but back where I come from, people don't watch slides. Okay, anyway, so that was in 2002, and now I'm just coming back from traveling Thailand and Korea. Now, the first thing to say is when you go to Korea, nobody speaks English. Nobody even reads Latin characters, Latin language. So that makes things slightly more complicated. But again, let's look at the points that we looked at before. So what's happening? Where do we go? Maybe you're at home or you're in an internet cafe. You fire up Google, you fire up Wikipedia, and you get some information. I'm not saying that this information is always very good, but you get some information. How do we get there? How do we get around? To get there, you take your online travel agent of choice. You compare lots of prices. You get the cheapest flights, which very often might not be the best one, but anyways, you get there. To get around, okay, here it's starting to be good, because you have your mobile phone, and when you go to Asia, to many places in Asia, internet's ubiquitous. There's always an open wireless LAN, or it's pretty easy to get internet. So you simply go to Google Maps, you type where you want to go. I wanted to go to Etri in Beijing, and Google Maps gives you the place where you want to go in the Korean letters. That's nice, because then the taxi driver knows where to go, and he can read it, and you can just show it to the taxi driver, and the taxi driver takes you there. Another thing then, of course, is that's quite nice. Once you're there, you can, and you have internet, and you have your GPS coordinates, you can get informed about sites around. In this case, it's just Frankfurt Flughafen, because I was there yesterday. But you can be informed about sites around with information. Okay, for these sites, we have information in Wikipedia and so on. Or you can even have it as an augmented reality. You hold your camera around, and you have augmented reality pop-ups in which direction you have to go, for how much, for which distance. and then you're there to see certain sites. Where do we sleep? Of course, again, there are plenty of sites, Agoda, HRS, and so on. You can compare the prices. You have the information if they have rooms available or not. You have consumer reviews. You even have the maps directly on the mobile phone that tell you where this hotel would be. Additional information. How can we communicate? Again, in India it was easy, everybody spoke English. In Korea, nobody speaks English. So what do you want? You get to the hotel, there's a receptionist. She's smiling at you. She's very, very polite, but she doesn't understand a word of what you say. So what you really need is, I don't know who of you knows The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but you would need a Babelfish. And as a matter of fact, the Babelfish is not so far away, because again, you have internet, you have Google Translate. You can simply type, can I stay 2 nights longer? And you translate to Korean, and it's written in Korean, so you just, again, you can show it to the person, and the person knows. I mean, now there are even translation services that read out the text, but I felt stupid using it, so I simply fell back to this. Need some more? Quite nice, you go to a place, I don't know if some of you have seen WorkSense. You have augmented reality that you use your mobile phone, you point it at something that is written in a language that you don't understand, and it's directly translated at the same place. So in this case, it's not translated at the same place, but you see some characters, and it translates to sushi. So you actually know what you order. This, when traveling to Thailand, or to Asia in general, is very important to know what you order when you want to eat. Or even more, maybe this is my current favorite topic, favorite subject. You have AR glasses, so you don't need your mobile phone and you don't hold your mobile phone around, but you just put on glasses. Now there are some available by Epson or Brother, which are still pretty, the overhead is, let's say, pretty big, but for example, if you look at Vuzix glasses, okay, many people wouldn't run around using them, but I would, I'm honest. It's just they cost 5,000 euros, so at the moment I think they're too expensive. Or anyway, as I was pointing out earlier, you could have the Google glasses, which have been advertised a while ago. By the way, my opinion, if you look at Brother and Epson and Vuzix, Google will not be able to produce these glasses within the next 1 or 2 years anyway. But then, of course, it would be nice because then you just run around with your glasses in an environment that you don't know. You directly have feedback, you have internet, and you can get everything translated. Now, maybe since Echa is will maybe push me in time. Now, where is this leading? We were always thinking that getting more information, having the people better informed, would empower the people. And as a matter of fact, if we think about the history, that was pretty much the case. Originally, the people, the kings and emperors were having the information superiority, actually, or the church, and they were in power. Then there came Gutenberg, the good Gutenberg, not the new. Anyways, there's a new Gutenberg in Germany that we all fear, and he started printing books, and then suddenly there was information available for more normal users. A little bit later on, we had newspapers. Again, a little bit later on, we started to have mass media. Then the Internet 1.0. Then actually Web 2.0 with sites like Tuyo or Chow, where you can write consumer reviews. Not all of them might be legitimate, but at least if you browse through them, you get a pretty good impression. So if we go all that way, it's really a path that gives more power to the people, because they can get more information, they can exchange information, and they can publish. That led to the idea, or that led to the saying that deer now have guns, because suddenly we can fight back. However, being a little bit more pessimistic again, what do you do if the deer have guns? You go into the ammo business. And if we think about the ammo business, what is the ammo business today? We have Google, DoubleClick, Quantcast, and so on, keeping track of what the users are doing, where the users are going, what they're looking at. We have Facebook, knowing pretty well what you're doing and what's happening. And there are a couple of citations or quotes that I wanted to share with you that I heard or that I read not too long ago. A very nice one. The best minds of my generation are thinking about which ad to show to whom. It's the reality at the moment, but it's it's pretty depressing, I think. Then again, MySpace, after failing to meet the expected income, starts selling their user data. Okay, so there's suddenly something where you get a little bit surprised. And then you hear Facebook is and will always be free. And at Facebook, your data is yours. Yeah, right. I mean, okay, anyway, people may think so. So they may have guns, but we know who they are. Or well, if you're one of those service providers, you know who they are, you know with whom they're friends, you know who they're talking to, you know what they think and what they want because they express what they want in their messages and in their communication. So you even know what they're aiming at. They may have guns, but you know what they're aiming at because they start to complain about some big companies, Nestle and so on. And unfortunately, once you have the people using your service, you can even remove their ammo because if they get to have two strong signs of opposition, well, there's no spam in Facebook. There's no pornography in Facebook, and that's for a good reason because there's strong censorship in Facebook. So you know what they're able to do. Now I don't quite know how much time I'll be granted, but then, oh wow, okay. Then I'll try to be very quick. So I had a short story about how it can get even worse, because if you look at some companies, they really try to know everything about you. We have one of the cases I was writing down or showing one of the cases here. Apple is a very good example. And yeah, they're so cool, no effort, no hassle, it's Unix under the hood. And in the worst case, you can jailbreak the system. But I mean, make no mistake, in 2 or 3 years, you won't jailbreak your computers anymore. In 2 or 3 years, you won't buy your software because it's not yours. In 2 or 3 years, you will download the right to use an application as long as Apple wants you to use it. And when Apple doesn't want you to use it anymore, you won't be able to use it anymore, and that's it. And I think, I mean, of course, Apple is not the only case. Google is, might be even worse. One nice photo that I saw not too long ago, you might not be able to see it, is the big logo of Apple, Think Different. You see a photo of a lecture hall, and everybody, other than one person, is using an Apple. And I mean, now this is one photo from one university, but when I go into my lectures in Darmstadt at the moment, it's exactly the same. Everybody's using Apple. So, okay, you can imagine what that means. Anyways, so I had a couple of things that I wanted to share with you, but one thing that probably I would like to get at in the last couple of minutes is, what are the defenses? So we can think about what is the problem in the first place. You share personally identifiable information that gives away who you are, and information that gives away not only who you are, but what you like, what you do, and so on. And in order to defend, of course, you need to know first against whom you want to defend. Do you want to defend against somebody who's crawling your profiles? Do you want to defend against Facebook or a similar kind of provider? Do you want to defend against China Telecom? If you're a dissident, for example, you have to think about what you actually want to defend against. Then what are the weapons that you have to fight back? I think one of the weapons, of course, is awareness. I'll have a quick go at that a little bit later, and usability. What we computer scientists never understand is, why are the people so stupid that they can't use our controls that seem to be so intuitive to us? Okay, there's a communication problem, obviously. Of course, we can use crypto, and then one thing that we can do is we can try to remove the central provider. And I think on the long hand run, this is really the only example, the only solution that can really work. You need to use the others, but in order to get back in control, we need to remove centralized providers. We did that with AOL. AOL started or tried to take over the internet 15 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe by now, 15 years ago, but they didn't succeed. But they were using pretty much the same ways that Facebook is using today. Only back then you were the customer, so you had to pay. In Facebook you don't pay, so it doesn't hurt. So there are a couple of examples. You can raise awareness. I was writing down maybe our grandchildren should be fine. But then again, if I think about Fox News, I'm probably not that optimistic. You can increase usability. We have a Facebook plugin that you can download from our webpage that will present your Facebook profile in a way that it's very, very easy to understand what's visible to whom with colors. And you can Just by clicking on little boxes, you can change the setting very easily. So you know, okay, in this case, I don't want everybody to see it, so I can withdraw the authorization.
There's also a social fixer.
Sorry?
There's a plugin called Social Fixer.
Social fixer.
Which like rearranges things so it's more like the older Facebook, so it's more pleasant.
Okay.
Also, like blocks more data, and there's a whole bunch of data blocking plugins.
Yeah.
But the problem with most of these things, just like anything else, is that you really never know. If
Yeah.
I'm a programmer, which I am not,
Yeah.
I really have no idea what the code is doing.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
use a Tor
Yeah.
to potentially shield myself from, but I really have no idea.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing we can
That's-
do at that point is disconnect.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because especially in this case, we were thinking that everybody will openly see that this is only a good thing, that this is really making things more easier for the users. But of course, we are not open with how we use data. I mean, we don't take any data, so in that case, there's no.
I still think it's like the one biggest thing nobody ever talks about is that as a person who doesn't write code, where if you
Yeah.
can't hack into something, you really have no idea. And there's just some people who just don't have the facility
Yeah.
to write or read code.
Maybe I guess the only.
It's such a big issue
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah.
You know, like you're just not safe at all. And you just have to have faith.
Yeah, but I mean, when you. Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah, but I think coming back to this earlier point here, I think it might be similar to the mass media. I mean, you have to trust the mass media you use, and maybe after a while you realize that some cases of mass media are just bullshit, and some other sources might seem more legitimate or might make more sense. But I agree, it's a difficult point. And again, as I was saying, we didn't think about that. I just thought we program something, we give it to the people, and they'll be happy. But yeah. But again, we don't declare that we don't take data. So we should really write that down and make it clear. Okay. Anyway, then of course there's crypto. This is I'm going to skip this quickly. So of course you can have explicit and implicit information being covered by crypto. Some things you might not want to share. But then finally, I think the only possibility that you have is you want to remove the centralized provider, and you want to get your control back, the data distributed to several places. There's maybe one slide that I'm going to show to end with. This is mainly the step that has to happen. We have to break up the vault. So at the moment, what we have is we have a couple of big data centers with, in this case, I took the Facebook logo, but there are some other companies which do the same, which collect all the information. So they have all this information about the people, and not only about many people, but in very high detail as well. For each of the persons, they have information in very high detail. So what we are proposing is to distribute the data again back to the web in a similar way that the step from AOL to the real internet brought decentralization. And there are a couple of approaches that I won't go into much detail. Safebook is one of them. As a matter of fact, we designed and developed Safebook maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Right now we realize that it's not performant enough because people will not use it, because the delay it takes to get information out of the system is too high. We have been putting a strong emphasis on security, but in this case, it's not usable. It takes too long to get the data. So at the moment, we are redesigning the architecture. It might not be called Safebook. It might get a different name, and we might actually go to a little bit less decentralization, but more usability, trying to still preserve the privacy of our users.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Rather, I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
So you can go back to the page?
Yep.
So you mentioned that people like to break up the vault and distribute the data.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can you just very briefly repeat the motivation for that?
The motivation?
Yeah.
Because if you, so there are different aspects. If you have the complete data, okay, if you have the complete data in this one big data center, and you have one single instance or one single institution that can access all this information, then this institution is very, very powerful. This is not the only problem, but if there's
So what do you think about, say, governmental institutions?
about
Governmental institutions? So
yeah.
Norwegian tax office,
Yeah.
about all the tax of all the Norwegians
Yeah.
in the country.
There,
What kind of data should be distributed to, or do you think that's safe to store in one place?
Actually, as a matter of fact, there are big discussions about, or there have been big discussions about that in Germany not too long ago, because Germany has started to put in place technology that allows, for example, the tax offices to get every kind of information about everybody via a central interface. It's not stored at the same place, but via a central interface. And I personally think that this is not a good thing, because it's not only the fact that this institution or this person using the system is suddenly very powerful, but as soon as there's a mistake, as soon as somebody forgets to put a password, this information is accessible. The entirety of this information is accessible via one spot, and I think this is a big problem. Or if you look at maybe Facebook is not bad, maybe Google is not bad, but if you look at single people working in different places, in Google Mail there was the case that the engineer was accessing the information, and then again, if there's one single point of access to all this information, in my point of view, that's not a good thing. So yeah, so that if that answers the question. Yeah, maybe. No, that's perfectly fine.
I need to clean the stage here.
Yeah, go ahead. I just want to get to the last.
People are hungry, and
maybe let me get to the.
and we have 2 more talks.
That's fine. Well, but it was not my mistake that we started late. And by the way, I have the 45 minutes over since 5 minutes. Okay. No, but anyway, so one summary. I think we're getting there slowly, but with power we're getting there. In the meantime, I invite everybody to take all the chocolate, but don't put all your eggs into one basket. That's an old saying, which is more and more true. Try to separate the information about yourself to different providers, because at least if one of them is bad, the data is safe with the others. And maybe on the long run, trust in us, and any kind of help or support is appreciated. We're working hard in order to build services that you can use that will be as cool as Facebook or whatever, but that will be secure and privacy preserved. Thanks.
Thank you, Thorsten.
That's cool.